Alrighty, so this is the first Tuesday in November, which happens to also be the first day in November. So we are here with you today live. And Janet has some great educational
I do, I
material for
do.
you. Do we have any updates, notifications, housekeeping, anything before? I think.
I can't think of anything. We don't have any upcoming events at the moment. Hmm. Nope. We're working on a bunch of things. Eventually, we'll have some exciting announcements. But right now, uh, what I want to talk about is um, the last newsletter and prior to that, in the last in October's Tuesdays at 2, I touched on balance and balancing of patterns, and I found there was a lot of questions. It piqued a lot of people's interest, and there were people who totally misunderstood the concept of a balanced pattern. So I just want to one more time kind of drive home some of the most important parts of creating a pattern that fits you. Now, I'm not talking about drafting one, we're talking about making it fit you. So either you're going to make a sloper or you're going to take the pattern that you want to make and first make it in a muslin in order to correct any fitting irregularities. And there are going to be some. There are almost always going to be some large or minor tweaking that needs to be done to fit your particular body because, as I try to stress so many times, is each of us has a very unique body. And we might be the same waist measurement, same bust measurement, but our back waist length might be 2 or 3 inches difference, which means the bodice will fit entirely different, even though the circumference is the same. And the same thing goes with in proportions in when you're making pants. Where's the knee? Because of anyone who's as short as I am and lived through the bell bottom era knows what happens when you take a flared pant or a bell bottom pant and take 3 inches off the bottom. The bell's supposed to start around the knee. Well, now it's starting around the calf, and it doesn't quite have the same effect. So, proportions are really important as well. So, I just want to go one more time through um, making a muslin, checking the balance, and answering your questions on that very thing. So we have been working on a muslin for Brenda, and many of you know Brenda. You've at least know her through talking to her, or emailing when you place your orders or ask questions. Well, Brenda, and if you were participated in the Everybody's, we did the shirt we made in the Everybody's sew along was for Brenda, and it looks smashing on her. But what we found, and I never knew, and I've known Brenda for 30 years, I never knew that she was so, I call her crooked now. I call her my crooked little friend because as we are putting this
So
pattern,
endearing.
we both laugh.
Yes,
I,
just
I hope.
just so you know, she does laugh.
But well, the thing is that it isn't due to any fault of anybody's that your body is shaped different than mine, and mine isn't perfect. So, and neither is yours. Everybody's different. But when you get to some of the irregularities that are more stronger irregularities, then the pattern's just not even going to hang right on your body or it's going to be uncomfortable. And maybe you haven't even recognized what those are. I've gotten quite a few where people write me and they say, I didn't know I had one hip higher than the other, but my pants always felt funny right in the crotch area
Mm-hmm.
on this side. But I never knew why. Now I know why. Now I can fix it. That's exciting. So a lot of times you haven't even realized that you have these differences, but once they're corrected in a pattern and you wear a garment,
Mm-hmm.
oh boy, then you see the difference. So anyway, we are working on a special project that we'll be showing you next week. And we're using Brenda as one of the examples. So we are going through a painstaking muslin experience. And I'm going to call it painstaking just because there are several irregularities that cause us to make more muslins. We have to correct one area and then see how it works with the other area before we correct it. So, and I'll explain all that in a minute when I show you the pattern. But this is the project we're working on. And it fits the dress form, and they all will fit a dress form very well. That doesn't mean they'll fit you. So let's see. Where do we want to start? Well, as I talked about in an article recently too, which was about pattern alterations, and I got some really nice compliments from some of my peers about that article because so many people will call me and they'll say, well, how do I do the rounded back, or how do I do the high hip, or how do I do the full bust adjustment, or whatever these different adjustments that they're used to making are. And we don't generally do that. Sometimes full bust, if that's the only thing that's needed. But really, it's better to fit it in actual muslin. And here's the reason why. First of all, not all patterns are created equal. So we know there are a lot of imposter pattern makers out there, or not as fastidious with excellence as some of the rest. So you might not even have a good pattern to begin with. It may not even be in balance. Now you do this pattern alteration and it's going to throw everything off. And then you put it on, you go, gee, why didn't it work this time? Well, it didn't work because the pattern maybe wasn't in balance or wasn't made as well as the previous pattern you tried. Also, a lot of the pattern alteration techniques that are in these systems will work for one size. So if you wore an 8 and you wanted to just bring that certain area up to a 10, you could do that alteration. However, and I've seen some of these where people have tried to help a friend, and the friend needs that same alteration, but 4 or 5 sizes different. And then they find out that it will not work. It actually won't even make a pattern that looks like a piece that you could sew together. It becomes very wonky. So, but there's no substitute for putting it right on your own body and pin fitting it to make it hang right and fit well. So if you have one alteration system and it always works for you, then my goodness, don't stop using it. But if you come across a time that it doesn't, this could be why. So the first thing I always say is make sure you have a quality pattern, and that quality pattern will be in balance if it's a quality pattern. So a couple of the things well, wait a minute. First of all, let me explain balance. Balance means that all the pieces are going to line up correctly, they're going to fit together well, and they're drafted to hang right. So, and I'll be going over a couple of those areas, but specifically side seams. You should lay the side seams of the front and the back on top of each other, and if they are absolutely identical, then they are in balance. If one has a little bit different shape than the other, not in balance, not going to hang straight. Okay?
And yeah, so just real quick on the balance stuff, that's a brief explanation of it. I know Janet mentioned it the last time we did Tuesdays at 2, and a lot of people are like, what's what's balance, what's balance? And we didn't have time to answer it. And sometimes we talk about stuff so much that we're like, oh, they already know that. But we're always having new people come in. So do not feel afraid to ask those sorts of questions, because sometimes we need that reminder. But you can go to our YouTube channel and find some of the videos where we talked about that in more in depth as well as in the Pattern Making Made Easy book.
Yes, and if you have pattern making made easy, you'll notice starting on page 65 through 67, there's a general explanation of what a balanced pattern is and why it needs to be balanced. If you go to the index, it will give you each of the pages for the different areas, like arm side. There's an arm side balance. So you'll find the different pages to do that in. And if you're interested in pattern making, this is the best book on the market, and it does have all that detail about balancing. Some pattern making books do not address balance at all, which is really disappointing. So, so that's what balance is generally, and we're gonna hit that a couple more times here in my demonstration, and then of course we'll take your questions. So, hey Brenda, could you get me a sleeve? I forgot to grab a sleeve out of that pattern.
So I'm just gonna put. I know a lot of you have this book and love it already. Oh, yep, Karen. I love that book. I'm gonna put the link for it now in the comments so you know what we're talking about. Sandy says, "Can't live without my pattern book. It's so helpful."
It really is. Even if you just, let's say that you have a wonderful garment pattern that you really like, but you want to change the sleeve into an entirely different style sleeve, something with a lot of flair or whatever, you would go to the book and it'll show you just how to take that sleeve that came with that pattern and make the changes, and then it'll still fit and still be in balance with your pattern, but you'll be able to make the design changes, not fit changes. I'm talking about here is design changes. So, so the book is really great for that as well. You can dive in and just start drafting, or you can get your feet wet by learning a little bit at a time.
So Marlene is asking if balancing is the same as truing up.
In a way, yes. But when you true, you are making sure that everything is level and clean. So in some areas, truing and balancing will be the same thing. So, yeah. Okay, so I want to just slip over to the other corner, and then I'll start talking about the supplies that you need to get started.
Door when you go over there.
Okay. As dramatic, but it'll be fine. Okay, so, okay, this is the book we're talking about. Mine's kind of falling apart, but there it is. This is by Connie Amadon Crawford, and it's absolutely, she was a professor at FITM in Southern California, and she left to, after a 23-year career, she left to write textbooks and to study the plus size figure. So also in this book is going to help anybody who has a plus size figure and how to get a better fit. And I'm not going to go into it, but I'm going to tell you plus size people have a horrible time getting a good fit because the patterns aren't graded properly for them to get the proper fit. So anyways, that's the book. Now, for example, when you get a pattern, now this isn't a real drastic difference, but I want you to see that the back of the sleeve is not symmetrical with the front of the sleeve. Usually it's going to be much more severe than this one, but you can see because we need more room in the back, no matter who you are, that back arm side going around your back to the underarm is longer than the one in the front, going around the front because you're hollow right here. So this is a shorter distance than the distance in the back. So if perhaps you buy a pattern and it's cut on the fold and it looks like this, completely identical, don't bother making it. Don't bother cutting it out. And if at all possible, get your money back. Because that is a very bad pattern. And what will happen, because there's not enough arm side or enough area in the back of the sleeve, what's going to happen is you're going to get drag marks across the front because it's going to be pulling because there's not enough fabric back there. So if you have that situation, or you have the situation where your shirt keeps going back and you have to keep pulling it, a lot of t-shirts today are made with symmetrical sleeves, and then that's what happens. It chokes you. And
yes, Sandy said, I can't believe how many patterns have the sleeves that are equal. And I feel like that's really such a benefit of learning Islander sewing systems and this pattern making stuff from Connie. But sometimes it's sad too, because then you realize what's been wrong, but it's wrong with so many things.
Well, yes. And here's the thing. I would never buy another pattern from that company because clearly they don't know how to make a pattern. There are lots of very inexpensive softwares where people kind of play and think they're making patterns, but those patterns aren't in balance and generally have some serious problems with them. And it's the same thing like I talked about in the alterations, that you're shooting in the dark. You're shooting in the dark when you don't know what you don't know. So you're just following the directions and then it doesn't come out right. Then what do? You can't go back because you don't have the knowledge to fix it. So the alteration system will do that. You'll try it, it'll work one time, you try it again, it doesn't work, you don't know why. But with making a muslin, you'll always know. It'll always be obvious right in your face.
So Ruth has a question.
Sure.
She says her shirts always fall to the front rather than the back.
Whoa.
Any ideas on that?
I'd have to see Ruth.
Yeah, okay.
Because that is not, either they're too big, Ruth, or you have a different shape that I'm not familiar with. And trust me, I know that's possible. There's lots of them. Okay, so we talked a little bit. So the other thing you want to do, again, we talked about putting the side seams. Those are two really important places to balance. If those side seams don't match, let me get this dress form here. If they are not identical, when you put the garment on, and this seam does not fall straight down the center of your body, especially if you've got pants on, you'll see that side seam. Yeah, this is imbalanced because it falls straight. But if it pitched and it hung crooked and pulled to the back, that's out of balance. And same if it went to the front. And a lot of patterns do that. I see them on people at sewing shows all the time. And it could be easily corrected when the person was making the pattern if they knew how to make a pattern. Okay, so when you make your muslin, you're going to need certain supplies. Nothing big, probably stuff you already have. You need some muslin. I prefer just a plain, clean muslin because you'll see I draw notes all over my muslins. So I want something that I can clearly see if it is fitting and I can write on it. So I like just plain muslin. But a lot of people use old sheets. They use all kinds of stuff. Paper, pattern making paper, so that you can trace out your original. Don't use your original pattern. Trace it out. Leave the original set aside so nothing strange happens to it. You can always go back to the beginning to see where you might have gone wrong if you have any hiccups. So I always want a black Sharpie because you're going to mark the center fronts on any bodice, and then you're going to pin them directly over top of each other because that's how the garment is going to hang. So this should hang nice and straight when that is done. Then you're going to make 2 horizontal lines that are supposed to line up. You'll see ours don't anymore, but they also help you to see that again our garment is hanging straight because those lines will hang straight. So if you're looking at yourself or someone else that you made a muslin for, and you're looking at them from the side or from the front, and those lines are doing anything but going completely straight, horizontal to the ground, there's something wrong. So that helps give you the visual, where's the problem, and you'll know right what to attack. Okay, so if the side seams are hanging crooked, the side seams are not in balance. The other things you're going to need is a red and a black pen. We use a red pen, and of course this has already been all sewn up here. Do I have 2 sleeves in here? Yes. We mark the seam allowance on the arm side and the neckline. And when we make the first muslin, we don't put the collars or the sleeves on, or pockets or any facings. It's just the front and the back sewn together to get the basic fit of the garment, and then the pieces are added. So again, if you take a red pen and mark that seam allowance, so then you, when it's on the body, you can see, oh, that seam line is way down here from my neckline. Well, I don't want my neckline down here, so I know I have to raise it. Or it's way up here. Well, I know I don't want my neckline way up here. So you can just automatically visually see what changes might need to be made. And sometimes you'll need another color pen. So I have several colors because every once in a while it's like we need to make it another mark and we don't want to use black and red. So green, purple, whatever. All right. So do you have any questions before I keep going?
No, but I did want to mention that of those things, you do carry the paper and the muslin
Oh, yeah.
on the website. If anyone, not that you have to buy that one, but you know it's quality.
Oh, yeah. If you're in need of the paper or the muslin, that's right. I'm sorry, Jess. Yes. And then what's really helpful, and we carry these too, which is curved rulers. So you may already have something. It doesn't have to be anything specific, but this is a really great curve. They originally, all you ever saw these in were metal. And when I found these in the clear plastic, I was thrilled because I could really see what I'm doing. But this is a great way to make a curve for a side seam. It's also a great hip curve for a pant. And then this, well, this just does so many great things, including necklines, crotch curves, and arm side curves. So, and you can just move it around till you get just the right curve. Works wonderful. Okay, so those are the kind of tools you'll need. And I love this repositionable or removable tape. Connie Woods is the one. It was Connie Woods, one of your Connies today. Mm-hmm. She's the one who clued me in on this, and I'd never used it. I'd always used just the plain old transparent tape. But what I found with this stuff, not only is it repositionable, it doesn't have the static electricity the other tape has. Now that's going to sound weird, but when you go to tape 2 pattern pieces together and you've got them lying just the way you want, and you take that other tape and you go to put it on it, the static electricity pulls the paper up before you're ready to put the tape down, and it misaligns everything. So I love this. Thank you, Connie. It also, if I use a pressing cloth, I can press the pattern piece out flat better than I can with the old type of tape. All right. Anything else just before I keep rambling on?
Couldn't stop you if I wanted to.
That's true. All right. So we're going to put the muslin on. And the first thing you're going to do is pin these shoulders. Now, please stay with me because so many of you missed this one thing. So are you listening? When we go to pull this up to make sure it fits both front and back, the raw edges of this seam allowance, let's say the seam allowance was drafted at 5/8. You may need less in the front and more in the back, or vice versa. So the position of these two edges will not end up together. They may end up as much as a half an inch off. And that's okay. But so many times I'm trying to help people fit, and what they'll do is they'll just take a narrower seam allowance or a deeper seam allowance. Well, let's say that this fit perfect in the front, but I need to get rid of some of the fabric in the back. Well, that would mean take a deeper seam allowance. Well, now the back fits, but the front doesn't, because they each have to be addressed separately. Even though they're sewn together, address them separately. Remember, you might be pulling one up more than the other. Don't be married to the fact that the raw edges have to be together. Of course, when we sew a garment together after the pattern's been balanced and trued up, then the raw edges will go together. So this isn't permanently misaligned. It's just we want to see what's going to fit your particular body. So please remember that. That is so important. Okay. So now I want to show you just what it might look like and how the differences might be. Yours might be more or less than what we found with Brenda. But let me show you her front. So this is the front, one side front. This is a easy shirt. Now, if you can see that we're matching everywhere here, we got to make sure we're on the same straight of grain. So we make sure that's happening. But now look what happened to this pattern. You can't even see here, I don't think, what the difference is. But this is a shallower neckline here. The shoulder's gone up higher here, but lower over here. And it's narrower. And the arm size higher. And we had to get rid of some of this in here, because Brenda is small in this area, but she has a hip line. So then we have to go back out, and we had to increase by that much in the hip and take that much away in the waist and the bust. But now it hangs beautifully on her. But wait till you see the other side, because it's not the same at all. So here's the other side. And what you're going to see here, look how much higher on this side of Brenda that front is. That much, because she's that much difference in her shoulder heights. You wouldn't know it to look at people. When they have these differences, they aren't as obvious as you would think they would be. But, you know, we had to take the neckline down a little bit. We had to make it a little bit wider for her here. We had to make it wider on this side, and I think narrower on the other side because of the asymmetry of her body. So, and again, taking away here. Now, before we say that this pattern is good, this is the one that we made. We're going to put the side seams on top of each other as if we're going to sew it together. Now here's something really unusual that you don't see every day, and that is that, oh, I gotta turn it over so you can see it. The side seams are matching up really nicely, but look at this. One arm side is that much lower, because one shoulder is that much higher. But now, this garment hangs beautiful on her. Now wait till you see this yoke. This is my favorite. I couldn't wait to show you this yoke, because in all my life, I'd never seen a yoke like this. Now look at that difference. Do you think that's clear? Should I turn it over with the other one white? The other side. Okay. So you can see here The neckline is not as deep, so we had to bring the neckline up a little bit. We had to make it wider here, again, shallower here. And look how much lower the back is. And remember, we made the front on this side longer because it's got to be longer and this one's got to be shorter. This one had a huge difference when we put those two, the shoulder seams together. And that's the first thing you want to do is get those shoulder seams because if they're not right, it's never going to hang right. And the other adjustments you make will be nullified when you go back to fix the shoulders. So do the shoulders first. Get it to hang straight on the shoulders.
Sandy is wondering why aren't the shoulders in the front and back the same width?
Because Brenda's shoulder is over an inch different on one side than the other. That's why. It's Brenda. See, this is your body. When you get done and you look at this, if somebody handed you this pattern, you go, well, who the heck made this? This is never going to work. But all these pieces fit together perfectly, and they hang beautifully on Brenda. They wouldn't hang well on any of the rest of us. It would, it would be really odd. But on her, and we'll show you next week because we're going to have a finished garment for you then. You probably aren't going to see, like I said before, this big of a difference. But by showing you that it can be this big of a difference, and yet this is the finished garment, so you can see that it's beautiful and it fits together, that when you see the what might look odd to you after pin fitting your muslin, this will put you at ease to realize that that's just who you are.
What does that change do for the armhole? Connie Russo is asking.
Oh, a lot. A lot. That change made the one armhole, as you saw, deeper than the other. When I put these side seams on here, so that shoulder that's lower, you can see that's a lower arm side there. But it has to be because the shoulder's lower. So again, you can't put the same exact sleeve in both sides because you don't have the exact same armhole. So what we do is, and we've gone over this and you'll see it in the old newsletter, but we measure the distance of the arm side between notches. And then right on the seam line, and you do it front and back, and then you do it to the sleeve cap. Everything should fit from the notch to the underarm seam because that is identical on a sleeve. But from the upper notch to the top of the sleeve, that's where any ease might be. And so we want to see how much ease is in there. We pretty much took her one side, the side that's got the average size armhole, the closer to what came, we took that to 1:1, which means there's really no ease in the sleeve cap. Right now we're working on the other sleeve where we have to take some more of the ease out because that armhole on that side is smaller. So we need a little less, but we're playing with that. And
so Judy's wondering, the armhole that is lower, is that for both front and back?
Yes, absolutely. The whole shoulder is lower. So, I'm exaggerating. I'm not making fun of Brenda. But this whole shoulder is lower. So now the arm side is lower. Otherwise, you couldn't get your arm in it. If you had the same arm here, then you'd have a short arm side. And you couldn't get your arm in it. It's got to be, it's the same depth as the other one. It's just in a different location. Okay, so once you have the pin fitting and you feel everything's hanging flush, and even if this isn't your be-all end-all, this is the time to take and transfer them to the paper pattern. And sometimes you have to make up a whole new muslin sometimes you can just add the changes. Unfortunately, sometimes you have to add fabric. Sometimes maybe to get the hips, you'd had to add a piece of fabric or something. You can do that, but I find it's easier just to cut a new one so I don't have all the stuff to worry about and get confused by. Um, one thing as you're pin fitting, one thing at a time. Shoulders first, then the side seams. Okay. When you're making your alterations, one thing at a time, and confirm that that's right before you go to the next change in your pattern. Again, one change can be compounded to the other one and throw everything off. So do one at a time, get your shoulders right, then side seams, and moving on. Now, if you have a really hollow chest up here or a very hollow back, which Brenda has both, there's special alterations, pattern alterations, or to change those pattern pieces. Here, what we did, if she has a hollow back, we put a seam down the center back. The garment doesn't call for it, but it's the only way without a princess seam we can get all what was extra back here. Otherwise, it just puddles right in here. And if we had a seam here and here, like you do on princess seams, we could take a little bit out. But trying to take it all out of the side seam won't work. There's still a puddling in here. So a center back seam, then pin fit it to the shape of your spine, and then you can get rid of all that. So I know some people have that. I've seen that, especially if you have pronounced shoulders up here. Swimmers have that issue. If you're a long time swimmer, you probably built these muscles up and you're probably thinner in here. So that's a solution, either a princess seam or a center back seam, so that you can get that out of there.
Sandy's wondering if a hollow back is a sway back.
It's similar, but it'd be the same alteration. Sway backs are more severe than this hollow back. She doesn't have a severe curve of the spine. She just has her spine is really quite straight, but she's just very thin in that area. And then she has a pronounced hip. So the fabric just sort of hangs up on the hip. If she was thinner in the hip, then it probably wouldn't be a problem. But because she's a woman and she's got a female shape, that's what happens.
Connie H is wondering, oh no, it's a comment. This is why you don't turn a garment wrong side out to pin your shoulders.
Oh yeah, very good point. Thank you. Do your seams on the outside. This is very hard to remember, and we've been laughing all week because we've been doing it. You're used to sewing right sides together. It's a habit. You're just going to do it, and then you have to stop, tear it out. Wrong side. We want wrong sides together, so the seam's out here, and we want it basted with a 5 or a 6, because if it's way off, I want to be able to rip it out and start pinning it. You don't want that stitching to skew what you have to do, because again, we're not keeping these level. We're going to do what we need to do to make them fit right. So put your seams always on the outside. Okay, well I am thrilled because I've had quite a few questions lately about pattern fitting or getting a sloper to fit. And of course, we have sloper patterns that they're all Connie's, and they're called sloper blocks, which means a block means it's the basic, and then you could add all the detail to it. So you got a basic block, which is a basic bodice short sleeve. You can add a collar. You can change the sleeve. You can put a peplum. You can make it longer. You can make it shorter. Once you get a block to fit, you could go off, especially if you have the pattern making book, and create the design elements that you want. But a sloper also works for just getting a good fit and using that to adjust any other pattern, to help you adjust other patterns. Of course, make a muslin if you make that adjustment. Don't just call it good and think, yeah, I got this, because there might be something you don't know. So always just give yourself that little extra assurance and make the muslin.
Connie is wondering if the book explains how to change the armhole.
How to change the armhole. It will tell you how to raise the armhole, raise and lower the arm side, how to make an arm side. I'm not sure, obviously it's all the drafting. So it's going to show you how to draft an arm side. So if you had a pattern that by the time you pin fit it all out, the arm side shape was gone, then you would do that, and you would use, this is excellent for an arm side curve. But the book would definitely give you the tips on how to do that. Sometimes if it should happen, because your pattern should be close enough to your size that when you pin fit it, you're not distorting the shapes of the neckline or the arm side. But so don't try to start with a size 20 and pin fit it down to an 8. It won't work. So get as close to your size as possible. We always suggest with women, it's by your bust size. And then some of you will say, but my hips are bigger. I don't care. Go by your bust size, because we can just let this seam out to get you a bigger hip. But you all know how complicated it gets in the bust area to try to get the right size and shape. So start with that difficult measurement and get that right. You know how to swing the seam out a little bit to get a bigger hip, or how to swing the waist out, or how to nip it in. But the bust, that's more complicated. Okay. And yeah, I think we brought that home. And next week we want to do a special edition. I know here we are, the second month of our only once a month programming, and we're going to do 2. But next week on Tuesday, we're going to do a special Election Day edition of Tuesdays at 2 this month. So we want to show you, we've been working on these fitting techniques, everything. We want to show you the finished project and share some of that with you. So we're going to do that next week. And we'll be showing you a couple of garments, and we'll see. I can't tell you too much. Jessica will kick me under the table.
You already said the thing about next week, like in the first 2 minutes of the show. People were like, next week.
Well, rules are made to be broken. So, any other questions? If they relate to this, or maybe they don't. If you've got a pressing sewing question you think I can help you with.
Speaking of a pressing sewing question.
Yes.
Sandy did ask earlier about what iron you use and that she needs a new iron.
Okay. So, Sandy, gravity feed. Gravity feed's the only way to go. I avoided gravity feed for quite a long time. I've only owned one for a few years now. And first I avoided it because, well, it was not in my budget. Then later on, as I taught more, I was gifted irons from different iron manufacturers almost annually for several years. And that was a good thing because they wore out in a year. So every year when the iron, when it came time, I'd go, oh, gee, this iron started to wear out. Here come a new one in the mail, which was great, but doesn't speak very well of those irons. So anyways, I finally broke down, and it wasn't as expensive as I thought because the gravity feed irons haven't gone up in price. They've kind of stayed level, and the home irons or the sewing irons have gone up in price. So it wasn't so outrageous as I thought. Anyway, the water hangs from a jug at the ceiling, and there's a tube that brings the water through the iron, but only when you push the button. So that means no water is housed into that iron to cause calcification and disruption, which is what messes the thermostats up, which is what causes the iron to spit and sputter. So that for that reason alone, it's wonderful. But get this, it doesn't use as much water. I don't have to fill that water only every few months. And I think it holds about a gallon. What do you think? That's about a gallon, Jess? So about a gallon of water, and I swear, I never did a scientific test, but I swear I don't fill it up as much. And it's got the right weight to it. So you get a nice steam every time. It isn't going to falter on you. And if you're interested in a good place to get one, I bought mine at Wawak. 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 They're in New Jersey. They're in Wawak, New Jersey. And they sell sewing and tailoring supplies to a lot of professionals like dry cleaners and seamstresses and things. And they have several levels of irons. One, the steam generators, they sell those all the time. I don't know why. I had that. They're noisy. They take a lot of water. And you'll be working away and all of a sudden the generator will go off on its own. And I found that quite disturbing. But it was more expensive than the gravity feed and nowhere near as nice. And it took up a great big room because it was a great big generator. Where this iron only takes up the space of an iron and it's smaller than a lot of the big home irons. And it works better and lasts longer. It'll last you a lifetime. So it's a great iron. So I think I've said enough about irons. Yeah. Anything else that I could help you with? All right. Well, I'm so glad that everyone joined us today. I hope we had some, I know we've been getting a lot of new people through our YouTube channel. And so we put our Tuesdays at 2 programs on YouTube, and we've got lots of sew-alongs on there, lots of tips and techniques that show you how to match plaids when you're cutting a garment, how to hem a pair of pants, how to put a zipper in 90 seconds. Lots of good stuff on there, and many of our patterns are sew-alongs. So look at the playlist when you go to YouTube for Islander Sewing Systems. I don't know. I think I had more to say, but I don't remember what it was.
Well, luckily we'll be back next week.
Yeah. We'll be back next week. And shall I come over there by you, or we just sign off from here?
Yeah, I won't make them get seasick turning the camera.
Don't forget, we've got a lot of beautiful plaid flannels and excellent holiday gifts. Hopefully we'll talk a little bit about that next week as well. Anytime you ever have a sewing question, just email me at islandersewing@comcast.net and follow us on YouTube and Facebook. And we love to see you again next week for our special edition. I think you're going to really like it because we're going to show you the finished garment on Brenda. So you'll see what we're talking about. So until then, happy sewing, everybody.